Our State of the U.S. segment tonight. If you were worried about the next generation of Americans, well, this next segment won't make you feel any better. According to a new report, 1 in 2 millennials, that is, those Americans between the ages of 18 and 34, would rather live in a socialist or communist country than a capitalist democracy. As if that's not bad enough, nearly 1 in 5 millennials consider Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-un to be heroes. With me now, managing editor of Young Voices and contributor to the Washington Examiner, Liz Wolfe. Liz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Liz.
All right, let's go through some of these statistics. This new report, it's shocking, it's surprising. I guess it makes a little sense given the number of millennials who voted for Bernie Sanders, but this report shows that 1 in every 3 Americans and 1 in every 2 millennials, our generation, would rather live in a socialist or communist nation than a capitalist democracy. That's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous to me, too. I mean, it seems like about 7 in 10 Americans misidentify the definition of communism. And so I'm curious about whether it's, sort of a failing of our school system or a failing of, our ability to understand, what communism and socialism have done in the past. When comparing older generations to younger generations, older generations can mostly accurately identify how many people have died as a result of communism. Younger generations drastically underestimate that number. And so we're seeing people who have this very idealistic notion of what socialism and communism look like in practice, which is really detrimental.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that these millennials, whoever they are, like I said, I assume they're Bernie Sanders voters, if they want to live in a socialist or communist nation, I mean, go to Venezuela, go to North Korea, go to China, go to Cuba, but don't sit here on your smartphone in the freest nation the world has ever known and complain to me about a capitalist democracy, because capitalism and the democratic constitutional republic that we live in, that's why you're free to say what you're free to, or what you're saying, and have these absolutely ignorant opinions. Liz, these same people, millennials, this is not even just 18 to 34. This is a wider age range. 42% of people believe that there should be restrictions on free speech to ensure that what is being said is not offending anyone else.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And this week, the Cato Institute actually also released a study on free speech attitudes. And it's really baffling. About 71% of Americans think political correctness has silenced the debate. So that's really good. That's showing that some people are understanding this is having a really chilling effect on speech. But then lots of people, about 34% of Americans, are saying that colleges should prohibit offensive speech, if it hurts marginalized groups or if it is targeted towards marginalized groups. I'm, completely against targeting marginalized groups and saying awful things to them. I think that's immoral. I think that's unethical. But people aren't understanding that the more you crack down on free speech, the bad results we see. We're not understanding the value of living in a liberal democracy, and we're not understanding the value of living in a capitalist free market society.
Right, and I think those two things are tied together. This lack of respect for free speech and this willingness or this celebration, I guess, of socialism. They don't understand the detriment of socialism. They don't understand how many people have died as a result of communism. So they don't have a problem when people say, listen, if you squash free speech, that's going to lead to government control. It's going to lead to socialism. Well, that doesn't scare them because they don't actually know, they don't understand, they don't comprehend the perils of socialism. There's some other statistics here that back that up. 1 in 5 Americans, that's 23% of Americans between the ages of 21 and 29, consider Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin to be a hero. 26% say Vladimir Lenin is a hero, and 23% of young Americans in their 20s think Kim Jong-un is a hero. This is unfathomable to me. I mean, basic history lessons tells you that all 3 of these men were not only violent dictators, they killed millions of people.
Exactly. And the thing that is astounding to me is, we learned about all of those in history class. We learned how horrible they were for the world. But about 12% of millennials think Nicolas Maduro is, a hero. And it's like, okay, well, you turn on your news and you should see what's wrong with that. And so it's not just an issue of them not paying attention in history class for a bunch of years. It's also an issue of them not paying attention to the value of having a liberal democracy now and what other countries are facing. I mean, just look at the facts. We're very, very lucky to live in the society we live in, and other people across the world are not so lucky. They, can't speak freely. Their speech is, suppressed to an even greater extent on college campuses worldwide. And when we lose sight of how lucky we are, we're going to fail to protect those freedoms.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. That brings us to our last statistic here. Unfortunately, I guess 15% is not too high of a number when you think about it percentage-wise, but when you think about 15% of how many hundreds of millions of people, 15% of Americans, and this is not just millennials, this is Americans overall, consider it to be an insult to be called a capitalist.
Yeah, that to me, it shows that we're not demonstrating the value of free markets. It shows that we're taking innovation for granted. It shows that we really don't know how good we have it here. And I mean, let's be fair to our opponents. You know, I want to be charitable to the other side always. It's reasonable. There are issues with capitalism, there are issues with crony capitalism. But I think we need to tease out those differences. I think we need to show that, you know, free markets by and large have contributed to astounding human flourishing, and we've been lucky to enjoy it. And if we don't continue to protect it, it's not going to exist in the future.
Right. What is it that Winston Churchill said? Capitalism is the least of all the evils of economic systems, and it is. I mean, it's lessened global poverty, not just in the United States, but the world over. It's lessened global poverty by so much in the last just 100 years. It's not even that far back in history, not that hard to learn from. Perhaps it's our failure to communicate the positives, the advantages of it. So, and maybe that's why young people don't understand it. I don't know. Liz, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.